All right. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Pete Carroll Was Right, the confusingly named Alabama football live show. I am Carter. That is Mitch. We are here to talk all things Alabama football with you. So that was a tale of two sides of the ball on Saturday. Um, it was, I don't know, I don't think we want to dwell on it too much, but most of what I have to say about the defense from Saturday is to kind of like talk y'all off the ledge a little bit. I don't want that to be mistaken for like, oh, it's fine, don't worry about it. There's nothing bad. It was a fluke, whatever. Like, it was horrid. It was terrible. There are probably significant issues here. Like, we can feel pretty assured that this is not going to be one of the better Saban defenses at Alabama. Um, but yeah, it's not. There's so much like I don't know to what extent other fan bases are like this, but I feel like Alabama fans are such prisoners of the moment sometimes.
Yeah.
Like yes, okay, like it was real bad, and a lot of the issues were stuff that we had seen in the first two games that just got magnified and completely, you know, all went to hell all at once against Ole Miss. And there's also been this like the defense wasn't great last year and it wasn't up to the standard in 2018. So like there's a lot of reasons beyond that game itself
hmm
why Alabama fans are frustrated with defense, but like y'all, they did like they held Missouri to 6 points outside of garbage time, and Mizzou just hung 45 on LSU, and then they they allowed 24 points to A&M mostly
Yeah.
mostly held them in check outside of garbage time, and then A&M just put up 41 on Florida and won. So like yeah, those first two defensive performances were not like dominant, but they were pretty solid in a lot of different ways. And I feel quite strongly that the level of defense we got in those two games is much closer to the sort of like true baseline of this defense than what we saw on Saturday. And if that's the
Yeah.
case, then you pair it with this offense and it's like everything's still in front of you.
Yeah. And you talked about like the mistakes kind from the first two games getting kind of magnified. And I don't know that they were sort of like randomly magnified. I mean, I think Lane is a guy who is very good at finding your weaknesses and then just over and over again attacking them. Um, so, and I don't know a ton about Monken. I know his background, like the types of offenses he's run is kind of varied. I know
Yeah.
he was like Les Miles' offensive coordinator at Oklahoma State at one point. But he has some like air raid in his past. He's obviously coached in the NFL. Uh, I, I don't know if that's kind of if this is going to be in his wheelhouse to take advantage of the types of things that Alabama struggles with, like tackling in space, which seems to kind of be an issue.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
like we'll talk about this more with Georgia for sure, but like I don't see them as like I expect that they will adjust the game plan to take some of those things, but like that's not the stuff that Lane does that Old Miss did is not generally what Georgia does. And it's hard to say with them because like we've at one point thought like four different guys were going to be their starting quarterback this year, and it seems like that was kind of the deal for them as well. And
mhm.
so, what they were going to run for Jamie Newman or maybe Dewan Mathis is not what they were going to run for JT Daniels, is not really what they're going to run for or have been running with Stetson Bennett. So like I don't know, I feel like they're in a bit of an identity crisis right now, like and to the extent that they have one, it's kind of fallen back on Kirby's man ball tendencies, which I think works in Alabama's favor. Um,
Yeah.
but with Ole Miss in the defense, it's like, okay, the tackling was horrendous, but like outside of Daniel Wright, sorry Daniel, but like outside of Daniel Wright, has the tackling been that bad in the other two games? I didn't think
No.
so. Like after the Mizzou game, we were all talking about what an insanely like ferocious and fast and talented front seven this was, and maybe that's not what they're going to be all year, but like I don't know, man.
I
Like I don't think the tackling is going to be that bad.
Right. And I don't think we necessarily missed anything in the Missouri game either, or like have the wrong. I think Lane was just good about getting like one-on-one matchups, whereas like in the Missouri game, they weren't like there weren't guys that were having to tackle one-on-one as much. Where a missed tackle is like 10 yards, like it was against Ole Miss.
Right.
And I don't know. Like I watched some of the like Georgia Auburn game, and I didn't watch as much of like the Georgia Tennessee game or the Arkansas game. But like Stetson can kind of make some plays outside of the X's and O's.
Yeah.
Um,
So
there
I
were a few
watched.
times against Auburn they were like free rushers, and he was able to like move outside the pocket and make some throws.
Yeah, I watched like I didn't see any of Arkansas, and I watched parts of Auburn. I pretty much watched all of Georgia Tennessee.
Okay.
Um, so like he's got some mobility, and he's good at kind of I don't know scrambling or like getting outside the pocket and kind of finding the open guy where he is once they've kind of broken into the scramble drill. But he's not like the guys who do that and who really, really mess you up are the dudes who do that and have elite physical talents. And he's just not that guy. Like he just doesn't like in the normal flow of the offense, he like doesn't really like throw outside the numbers at all. He just the arm is just not really there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he does a good job of working with the talent he has, but he's not. I mean, Matt Corral had a play on Saturday where they like flushed him out of the pocket to the right, and he like turned and planted and like chucked it all the way back across his body like a laser to the opposite side of the field, and
Yeah.
Bennett has nowhere near that kind of arm.
Do you think Corral is the best quarterback Kivens had? I mean,
Mm,
maybe going back to USC.
uh, Probably in terms of the combination of like arm and athleticism and physical talents. Like I don't know that he's a like really advanced passer from a like mental schematic perspective, but with Lane you don't need to be, and he's got
Right.
much more sort of raw passing talent than say like Jake Coker or like 2016 Jalen. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like if he's
And I
not, then
think,
it's close.
yeah, and I think that's kind of relevant. I mean, I think it's important to remember, like Lane. I don't know exactly. Saban seemed to kind of like try and squash the whole like they knew what plays Alabama was calling, like that there was any sort of like signal stealing. But yeah, I mean, Lane has as good a idea of as like any offensive person as to what Saban likes to do. Um, and so somebody with that sort of like sense of, how things like to be played combined with, just in general being an amazing play caller and having maybe his best quarterback, uh, on top of like them having like no like even close to turnovers. Like they played like a really clean game offensively
Yeah,
too. I think it was just like perfect storm of like
right.
really favorable things for Ole Miss.
Like it
No, that's not
was
to say Alabama wasn't bad,
right. Yeah,
but I think to your point is like I think a lot of people were watching that game and thinking, oh my gosh, Alabama's going to give up 50 to everybody they play, and it's like I don't think so.
yeah. Like it's like Lane is a great. The thing about Lane is that he is not only a great guy schematically, but also like a great play caller. And I think the difference between those two things is not really understood a lot of the time. Like he just has such a great sense. Like a lot of offensive coordinators, once you get them off the script, Jimbo, um, are like they don't have like they I don't know they may be average or whatever, but like they just don't have like the best feel for the game and for when to call what plays. And Lane is one of the best at that I've ever seen. Um, and then Ole Miss has incredible skill talent. Um, it was rainy, it was wet. Uh, Alabama is probably just bad in general at covering backs and tight ends. They don't have great safeties. That this is probably the worst safety situation they have had, like maybe in the Saban era, like the
Yeah.
proper Saban era post 2007. And then they just played bad. They played really, really bad also. And when it took that combination of factors to produce that kind of defensive performance. So
Yeah.
some of those things aren't going away, but some of them are.
And on top of that, they were 4 for 4 on fourth down, and 9 of 17, which is like, not outstanding, but still really good on third down.
Right.
And first of all, like you can't expect that teams are going to consistently convert fourth downs like that against you. On top of teams are not going to be consistently going for fourth downs like Lane is. Like Lane is kind of a little bit more aggressive than say I would expect Kirby to be in
like
this situation.
Like when they had the horrible, it was like a 3rd and 27, and they got like 20 yards on a draw. That was like 4th and 5 at the 20. I am telling you, Kirby is kicking that field goal every time.
Yeah.
Desperation situations in the SEC championship game notwithstanding. So yeah, it took a lot of things. I had like a mental list running of even the defenses you think of as the great all times. Maybe they weren't that bad, but almost all of them had a horrible performance that was totally out of line with their capabilities. Usually, and most of these I'm about to list are against teams that were not nearly as good offensively as this Ole Miss team in terms of talent or coaching. So, like, obvious example, 2011 Alabama gives up 300 rushing yards and 21 points to friggin' Georgia Southern, FCS Georgia Southern. They still were on the 65 scholarships back then. I don't know, like the 2014 Alabama defense was not one of the best ones of the Saban era, but they were better than giving up 44 points and 600 plus yards to Auburn that year. 2018 Clemson gave up. I think people don't remember this one, but in their last regular season game, they gave up 500 plus passing yards and 35 points to a Will Muschamp South Carolina team. Obviously, everyone remembers the 2015 Ole Miss game where they gave up like 43 points and there were all those weird plays and stuff. And that was a really good defense, but also that Ole Miss team was really good. Well, the next year, Ole Miss didn't even make a bowl, and they still scored 43 points on Alabama. Alabama won that game, but yeah, and there weren't nearly as many like fluke plays in that one as there were in the 2015 one. Like this shit happens, y'all. Like you have that combination of factors where teams turn in these performances that are just so much worse than what their normal baseline is. And yes, again, there are issues here that are probably not going to be solved. They're still probably going to be bad at covering back the tight ends. They're still bad at safety, especially in the first half against Georgia with battle out. So like don't expect this to be like a dominant Alabama defense, but it's not as bad as that. There is every indication it can be good enough. Like they need to get better, but like there's every indication it can be good enough to support this offense to a title. I still have complete faith in that right now.
Yeah, and I mentioned earlier Ole Miss was 9 of 17 on third down, and the point was more about the conversion rate. But it's also worth keeping in mind that there were like 17 third down attempts is like not great. That means Alabama was doing a pretty good job on first and second down.
Yeah. I mean, and this is like, you know, the two of us and Ben have talked about this game a lot, but the 2018 championship game against Clemson, like we talked about it a bit today, like that game was so that score is so not indicative of how close the teams were in terms of just like play to play. Like the yards per play average, like Clemson was like 7.6 and Alabama was like a little over 6, I think. But
Mhm.
Alabama dominated first and second down on both sides of the ball in that game.
Yeah.
And then on offense, they just screwed up and glitched, and Clemson made great plays, and they were terrible on third down. Whereas on the other side, Clemson was in a whole bunch of third and longs and got bailed out by Justin Ross making one-handed YOLO catches on the sideline on prayer 50-50 throws from Trevor
Yeah.
Lawrence. Like,
Yeah. And
like
Alabama literally having no pass rush.
yeah,
Yeah.
because like literally,
Literally.
remember Christian Miller got hurt in the Oklahoma game. Like they literally had no one outside of Quinnen, who by the way was still great in that game, but like one guy can't do it.
Yeah.
So
So,
like okay, the third down things is a great transition to the offense because let's talk about something happy because getting someone to 17 third downs is pretty good. Alabama faced like 7 third downs in that game.
on
That's
like 10 drives.
yeah, that's insane. And they converted like 6 of them or something. It was
Yeah, 6 or 7. Yeah.
like I assume you've all seen the Roger Sherman tweet with they got like there were only 41 yards, like they fumbled on a play that should have been blown. SEC
That was
refs
ridiculous.
never like they always do this, and like I hate it when Alabama's on defense and they have somebody all wrapped up in a scrum and they're pushing them 10 yards back downfield, and it takes them like 3 more seconds to blow the whistle because I just think that like somebody's gonna get mad and get shoved and they're gonna get in a fight and have a personal foul and like it's so
Yeah.
not they always allow this and it's just like blow the whistle for forward progress. It drives me insane. But like they had a fumble at the 1 yard line and they punted at the 40, and those were the only yards they didn't get the entire game. And yeah,
Yeah.
the Ole Miss defense is bad, like real bad. But like you got to be pretty goddamn good and playing pretty well to put up 700 plus yards on anyone.
Yeah. Yeah. I, it's hard to kind of put in like there was a lot of context that the production wise, I'm not sure there's been like an Alabama game that where they've produced as much as this, as efficiently, because there was, like you said, the 2 drives that one of them was virtually a touchdown drive that they didn't score on, and the other one was like max one bad throw of the game combined with like a blown assignment
Yeah.
on like on a free rusher that like it's like their one blown assignment that I can remember this year. So it's like the only like the Alabama offense is the only thing that's really stopped itself this year.
Yeah.
Now Georgia's defense is supposed to be very good, and they've looked very good against meh offenses so far.
Yeah, like it's just the last thing about the Ole Miss game is that like for the offense, like I don't care how good you are, I don't care how bad the defense is, you have to play so clean
Mm-hmm.
to do that, and that's what part of what gives me the confidence is that like not only did they play essentially mistake-free football, which is so rare to see, and a fantastic contrast to the defense, but like they were just in this situation where like it became obvious that they were not going to stop Ole Miss and that the offense was under pressure to score a touchdown every single time they went out there. And they never flinched. They never looked like the moment was too big. They never looked like they were nervous. They never looked like they were getting. There was just no doubt in. I don't like to do a lot of like base any kind of serious analysis in like armchair sports psychology stuff, but like they just look so utterly unflappable Like there was just never any doubt that they were going to go down and score on every single possession, and then they did. So that is a very encouraging thing to see.
And they had that string of like false starts and whatever, where they had like they were in the red zone, but it was like a really long.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to remember if it was first or second down, and they just run a jet sweep, like a touchdown.
And hey, Mac even had a throw where he like got flushed from the pocket and threw on the run and threw a really nice dart to John Mechie on the sideline.
Yeah. After his one bad throw, he came back and made like one of the better throws we've seen all year from him. And we saw some RPOs with him.
Yeah, they threw a quick slant off an RPO look. I was like, whoa, where was this?
All this,
bring it back, baby.
We still haven't seen some of the running talent that we've been hearing about with Mac, but maybe it's there.
Yeah, unload the playbook on Saturday. Give us that Mac Jones single wing. So Georgia, that defense is really, really, really good, and is doing to offenses things that a lot of defenses don't do these days. The thing I would say is that, one, not only have they not just generally faced good offenses, but in particular, they haven't faced good passing games. And the thing that gives me confidence here is it is still sometimes I think too much gets made of like, oh, like the rules are so stacked and offenses are so good now that like you can't stop anybody. And that's not true. Like if you're great on defense, if you're you have incredible talent and you're you have veterans and everybody's playing their assignments and all this stuff, like you can absolutely shut a ton of teams down. But elite offenses in today's game, when they play well, don't get shut down. It doesn't this Georgia defense is exactly the defense they had last year. They lost. The reason they're so good in part is because they lost almost nobody off of last year's defense, and a lot of metrics had them as the best defense in the country last year.
Yeah,
that defense played the 2019 LSU offense, which sure is probably the best offense we've ever seen, and they got whooped. They got 37 points to that LSU team, and part of the opposite was their offense not holding up their end of the bargain. But this is not the 2011 Alabama days where no matter how good that your offense can just hold anybody to under 20 points, or your defense can just hold anybody to under 20 points. If an elite offense, and in particular an elite passing offense, is operating on all cylinders, there's just not a whole lot you can do. There's only when those offenses get stopped is when they stop themselves.
Right. It's an elite passing offense that can attack every part of the field. There was, I think I saw Connolly. I don't know where the chart came from, but Connolly tweeted like a heat map or something of Max, passing, and it's 100% on like every portion of the field except some.
Yeah, I think it was his QBR when throwing to these various regions, and it was like a 28 on the shallow 0 to 5 yards downfield to his right, and then a 70 in the screen area, negative air yardage to his left, and then everywhere else was 98, 100, 100, 100, 100. It was insane. Dimes everywhere. It looked like a Ken Griffey Jr. batting chart from the mid 90s.
Yeah, and it's even the best defense can't cover all of the field, right? Defense is still reacting to offense,
right?
At its core, and so especially, and then with an offense that's this good that doesn't really make mistakes. The most mistakes we've seen are false start penalties or they're lined up incorrectly or something. We've only seen what I think one turnover-worthy play from Mac this year.
Mm-hmm.
Then not they've only had one fumble, right? Like, it's. I feel really good about this side of the game, largely because of this side of the ball, because Georgia's defense is their best unit. Alabama's offense is their best unit, and I think Alabama's offense is much better than the Georgia defense is.
Yeah, and it's just so I think the one counter argument people might raise is like, what about LSU against if we're making the LSU comparison? And I don't think it's a wild one because honestly, this offense has been absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
So the one time LSU sort of got shut down last year was against Auburn, and what Auburn did in that game was essentially like play the game plan that teams are using against Mike Leach this year. They'll like rush 3 and drop 8. But the difference is that Auburn had one of the best defensive lines in college football, one of the best defensive lines we've seen in recent history. And it kind of played well against the way that LSU likes to play it. So the big thing that LSU did last year that made them so unstoppable was that they just went empty 5-man protections like every single play and put 5 men in the pattern every single time. And against the vast majority of defenses, what they were essentially betting on, because the offensive line was not that good. It was fine. It was not horrible, not great. They were just betting that no matter how much pressure you brought, Joe Burrow was going to find an open receiver with 5 men in the pattern before you got to him. I mean, he made so many incredible throws with dudes just breathing down his neck or like leaping on top of him as he threw the ball. Mm-hmm. Or he was quick enough and mobile enough that he would get out of the pocket and make something happen there.
Yeah.
Auburn stopped that by getting pressure with 3 and then having 8 guys cover just long enough that those 3 elite defensive linemen could get pressure on Burrow. Well, the answer to that is that for this matchup is that this Georgia defense is not that Auburn defensive. They're very good on the front. Mm-hmm. I think they have like 10 sacks so far. Azeez Ojulari is really good. Yeah. They're really solid up front. They don't have like a couple of first rounders. Like they don't have like a Derek Brown and a Marlon Davidson up there mm-hmm. in terms of like true defensive linemen. So they're not going to get pressure with 3, and I don't think they're going to try to. And then the Alabama offensive line is much better. And Alabama's not going to go 5-man protections. Like they don't do that a lot. Like they're going to mostly they're going to be in 11 or 12 personnel. They're going to have a tight end. They're going to have Najee pass protecting a lot. Like they're going to give Mac time to throw. And I think Georgia probably will try to drop a lot of guys and get pressure without blitzing. And they probably will. Mac hasn't faced an iota of pressure so far, but they'll probably get some pressure on him. But we've seen him make we've seen good and bad from him with pressure. Like we've seen him make bad throws off his back foot under pressure that led to some of the turnovers against Auburn. But we've also seen him just deliver absolute shots down the field with pressure right in his face. So I don't think he's all quarterbacks get worse under pressure, but I don't think Mac is going to be just absolutely flummoxed by it.
Yeah.
And this Alabama offensive line, for whatever they've not been as dominant as we maybe hoped in run blocking. They looked great against Ole Miss, but Ole Miss is Ole Miss. They have been incredible in pass. The Texas A&M defensive line is really good. It's not as good as the Georgia defensive front, but that's a line that's going to get pressure on most people when they try to throw downfield. And nothing on Mac. They didn't touch him. So Georgia's going to do better than that probably, but Mac's going to have time to throw. That's not going to be an issue.
Yeah, and worth mentioning too, Alabama's got guys who can get open. They've got an offensive coordinator who can scheme guys open. They've got a running back that they can, dump it off to in some cases that can make plays in the open field. We've seen some good usage of the tight ends. Uh, like there's just so many reasons to think that the Alabama offense is going to be really successful on Saturday.
Yeah, like I don't think they're going to get much in the running game. I hope Sark doesn't try his running on second and long bullshit. Um,
Mm-hmm.
if Kirby gives you 5 men in the box, go for it. Take those 7-8 yards. Like especially because they're going to try to take away the long ball. Like they've done that. They did it against Tua in 2018. That's a lot like what Venables did with Clemson in 2018. Um, I think Mizzou and A&M tried to load the box because they didn't know what Mac was yet. But I don't think
Yeah.
Kirby's going to make that mistake. Like
No.
they're going to make them try to dink and dunk down the field, which
Yeah.
is a lot like what Ole Miss did, and it didn't work that well.
Yeah.
Again, vastly different calibers of defense, but
yeah, and so definitely if we see Sark's penchant for early down runs, that has the potential to, because the Georgia defense is pretty good at stopping the run. I mean, it's a Kirby Smart defense. Like they're going to be good against the run. But they can be smart about it if he's just like gun ho about being safe on first or second and long for whatever reason. Like, they can run they can get some horizontal stuff going. Like they can, run out of 11 or 10, maybe. I'm just like trying to talk myself into what's going to happen. Like, I just don't want to like be like they shouldn't run when I'm fairly certain they're still going to try and run. And I know I'm just trying to like talk about how it could possibly be successful.
The only thing to me there is just not, which is really a lot of times the only thing that should be talked about with the run game is just numbers. Like when they give you they're gonna try to, I think they're gonna try to sit back and make Mac throw under and trust their guy, because this is like Kirby hasn't had defense quite this good at Georgia, but a lot of his earlier ones they've all still been really good, like since 2017 especially. And like they have been much more of a kind of sit back and rally to the ball type defense than Saban's best defenses have. And so I think that's entirely within their kind of comfort zone and their wheelhouse to play that sort of defense. And I think that's the smarter play against an Alabama offense that can be this explosive.
Yeah.
So I think if they do a lot of that and they give you the numbers, like this offensive line is good enough and Najee is good enough that you'll be able to stay fairly efficient running the ball. Like I don't think like this is not going to be Tennessee. Like Garantano sucks. Like he's not gonna. Like they were not gonna go. They gave up a grand total of -1 rushing yards to Tennessee because they were not afraid of Garantano downfield, and then the only offensive points Tennessee got were when he kind of like basically threw up 50-50 balls and Tennessee's receivers came down with them. And I think Georgia was fine living with that all day and just saying he's not going to make enough of those to beat us. They're not going to do that against Mac. And so just from a schematic perspective, I don't think they're going to be as lights out against the run as they were against Tennessee. So on the other side of the ball, the who knows what versus matchup. So the big thing that gives me hope here is that one, Georgia is not explosive at all. Their longest pass play is 49 yards. Their longest run by a running back is 20 yards. They had like one wide receiver, I think, do a jet sweep or something, and they got like 43. But Zamir White's like longest run is 20 yards. Like these Georgia backs are good. They're not DeAndre Swift, Sony Michel, Nick Chubb, Todd Gurley. They're not that caliber of running back. Like they'll get the tough yards, but they're not. I'm not worried about like getting beat by speed on it. Like as long as Alabama improves tackling in space, and I know that's a worry, but if they regress to the mean in terms of their tackling and space ability. I'm not worried about really getting beat to the edges a lot in terms of the running game. With Bennett, I don't know. It's sort of a dichotomy because he likes to throw to the middle of the field because he doesn't really have the arm strength to throw consistently outside the numbers. And I don't think that's a smart play against Alabama anyway, because the one true strength of this defense is that Pat and Josh are just absolutely locked down. But on the flip side, they don't throw to backs and tight ends very much at all. I looked at the numbers before the show, and they have 61 total receptions on the year, and 18 of those are to backs and tight ends. Their top 4 pass catchers are all wide receivers. Like a quarter of their total receptions have been by Kearis Jackson. So they throw to the wide receivers. First of all, they don't throw it a ton to begin with. They throw to the wide receivers, and in particular to Jackson, who I think plays primarily in the slot.
Yeah. And I'm not like, I think they're one like super talented guy, Pickens. Like he's caught the second most, but he's got like half of the catches of.
I think he has 8 Kearis.
Kearis.
Yeah, he has like 8 catches on the year. Like, I think part of it's that I don't know. I think he hasn't been playing that well, and he was benched for a little bit against Tennessee because, I think Tennessee scored, and he squirted Garantano with a water bottle or something like that, which is amazing levels of petty. But obviously, Kirby didn't take it too well. And I don't know. I'm not sure he doesn't seem to have much of a rapport with Bennett. Bennett has a clear favorite target. So it's weird because they like to throw over the middle, but they like to do it primarily to that slot receiver. And I don't know. They got Trey McKitty, the FSU grad transfer at tight end, back in the last game, and he had 2 catches for 49 yards. So I'm sure they'll scheme it up to get to him a little bit. They'll probably have more throws to the backs than they usually do, but that's not really their game. A&M, Aeneas Smith and Jalen Weidemeyer are two of their best offensive weapons. Ole Miss, Jerry and Ely is one of the most explosive players in the conference. Kenny Yeboah is really good. And Georgia's backs and tight ends are good, but they're not their kind of primary weapons. And so I'm sure Kirby and Monken will tweak the game plan to get it to those guys more than they normally do. And to take advantage of Bennett's comfort throwing over the middle and Alabama's, poor pass defense in the middle. So I have no doubt that they'll tweak the game plan, but you can't, offenses don't wholesale change what they do from week to week. Who you are is kind of who you are. And the tempo factor is another great example of that because, I don't know, it was frustrating to watch Alabama not get lined up when Ole Miss went fast, and all that was bad to watch. And I'm sure every offense speeds it up a little bit, rushes to the line and snaps it quick on occasional plays. And maybe Georgia does that more than they normally would, but they don't do that generally. That is not how they play. And tempo is one thing in particular that if you don't do it and you try to start doing it on a whim, it's harder than you think it is. I think repeatedly back to Lane's tenure when they would try to go quick in 2014, and they just were not good. They did not know really what they were doing at that point, and they had so many false starts and illegal formations and stuff. And even in 2016 with Jalen, they tried to speed it up a little bit, and they were kind of fits and starts of how good at it they are. So maybe in some third and short situations, they'll rush to the line and hand it off or do a QB sneak or something like that. But they're not going to just wholesale walk out there and start going warp speed. You can't do that on a whim.
Yeah. And just so many, there's definitely issues with this Alabama defense, but this Georgia offense is not particularly well suited to kind of put pressure on those places, like put pressure on those weaknesses. Because like you mentioned, like you can't like the Georgia offense is not the Ole Miss offense, and it's not going to successfully become the Ole Miss offense in a week.
Right.
I think people really, and I said this at the beginning of the season that like Ole Miss games are going to be kind of must watch,
Oh
just
yeah.
because their offense is insane and their defense is equally insanely bad, and like every game is going to be exciting. That's just not this offense. I do think you can kind of be lulled to sleep by how infrequently they've kind of thrown. I wouldn't be surprised if like all of a sudden, you know, Bennett has like 40 pass attempts in this game. Just given Monken's like history, like varied history. But I don't know. I don't know that he'll be as successful in those 40 plays as he has been in the 25, 30 that we've seen against Arkansas and Tennessee and Auburn.
Right, and he's just not. He just doesn't have the kind of arm talent that allows you to play a really, really aggressive passing offense where you're consistently asking him to force the ball into tight windows. So, particularly if Alabama is able to keep a corner or the star on Jackson, I think that bodes really well for their chances against this offense because I don't know. I think we hinted at this last week, but like I think you play really aggressive against Georgia's offense because like I don't know. I don't know that you have a whole lot of confidence in your defense to stop like sustained drives right now.
Right.
And so like sell out, like go for the sack, go for the TFL, like get off the field. Like a 3 and out is massive here because and sure it gets worse if your offense isn't scoring, but if your offense isn't scoring, you're not going to win this game anyway. So it's sort of a moot point. Like you have to play aggressively with the mindset that you're relying on your offense to win this game anyway. So
like I don't think this Georgia offense is particularly well suited to like when they get in the red zone to score on this Alabama defense. I think when you shrink the size of the field that Georgia can kind of work with. So, as long as those, they're going to get some big plays, but as long as those big plays are directly resulting in touchdowns, like I don't think that's terrible. You guys on the outside, play aggressively, but if you're getting beat, just grab them, pull them, just take the flag,
take a 15.
Like, I know we've said that and we always say it, but I would say particularly in this game, just like whatever.
Particular like Pat and Josh will be fine. I'm not worried about whatever George is putting on the outside. Now I don't know. A lot of people are suggesting that like Moore move to safety and Pat move inside to star, and they bring in Marcus Banks and. I don't know. This probably leads to a conversation we should have about the safeties, particularly with Battle out. Ultimately, I don't really have definitive answers here because I have no idea who they like beyond. Like, I'm pretty sure they had Brian Branch in as the dime. So, like, when they benched Wright in the second half against Ole Miss, they put in Helms at safety, and it was him and Battle. And then I'm pretty sure that I think they only had a couple dime snaps after that, but I'm pretty sure in dime they still moved Helms to money and then brought in Branch at safety. I know Branch got in earlier in the game for like one possession at star, but I'm pretty sure he was also in at safety in dime after they benched Wright. The thing is, I don't know that with Battle out that you can get away with benching both Wright and Helms. I don't know, because if you had another guy like. Where has that other guy been already?
Right, we would have seen him.
Yeah. If Eddie Smith were that good, if Christian Story were ready, if they were confident that, I don't know, Pat or Josh, or like I see people be like, move Pat to safety, move Josh to safety, and I'm like, I know they cross-trained a little more than usual this offseason for COVID stuff, so maybe some of those guys have gotten reps at safety, but if they have, I don't know that. I don't think any of us have direct confirmation of that. So, mm, what I expect you'll probably see, and I know this won't make people happy, but like, I think you're probably still going to get right, even if it's only in dime. Like in the second half, unless they have figured something out, and if Moore moves back to safety and branches at star or something, or they have both of those guys at star and
Mhm.
or both of those guys at safety and Pat's at star, and they bring in Banks at quarter, whatever. If they find something like that and it works, great, A plus. I'm all for it. I think what you're probably oh, there we go. As scheduled, it feels like it's getting a little later now, but
Yeah.
uh, anyway, so I think I don't know. What you're probably going to see is either Helms and Wright at safety in the first half, and then Helm moves to money and Branch comes in at safety in dime, or the opposite where it's Branch and Helms and then Wright comes in at safety in dime. Like if I had to guess, that's what I like. I would love for that to be wrong. I would again, sorry Daniel, but like I would love for him to be benched even with Battle out. But I don't know, man. If like
Yeah.
if something more drastic were going to happen, like I hope it happens in practice this week, but I kind of feel like we would have seen it already. So
Yeah. Who knows? Like, this is one of those things where maybe there is somebody back there that just hasn't gotten reps with the ones just because there hasn't been, they've only had fall practice, right?
yeah,
Like the reps were limited. Um, but I'm going to be very surprised if somebody comes out, if somebody we haven't seen comes out and they do something. I don't want to see Patrick move. Like
yeah,
I
I
I
don't
don't
either.
think you take your best guy out of his best position for something like this, you know, especially if there's just not like a strong case for it. And I don't know that there's a really strong case for it here.
Yeah,
You know,
and like
maybe
I don't know.
I could see wanting to move more if Moore has cross trained enough. But I don't. He's a true freshman that didn't get spring practice. Like I
Right.
don't know that he's gonna have cross trained enough to feel comfortable with him at safety.
Yeah. Like if I don't know if they feel like they can do that and that he's better than Wright and that Jalen Armour Davis isn't as much of a drop off at safety, um, then sure, you know, um, I feel pretty good in this game about considering how much they tend to prefer to throw to their wide receivers, about having
Mm-hmm.
Pat and Moore and Josh out there. Like,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's Malachi Moore against Kearis Jackson, who's his favorite target, I feel pretty good about that matchup. Like, Kai's been really good at star. Like, he wasn't great on Saturday. None of them were, but I don't know. He definitely wasn't one of the worst problems. So,
No.
like, I don't know like, if they come out there in nickel and it's Branch and Helms at safety, and then the three corners where they have been, I'll be glad to see that. Like that's enough of a change for me. Even if they have to have Wright in a safety and dime because they just don't they don't feel good about Eddie Smith or they haven't been able to make a position change or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then yeah, that's sort of the best I hope for. Um, so I had a couple people give me questions on Twitter.
Okay.
Um, Hamilton Cook asks, with 1 week of prep, what do you focus on? Emulate Pitt prior to 2007 West Virginia and just spend the entire week practicing tackling. Work on underneath zone versus slants, TEs, RB slot, or safety play. Um, I think it's sort of 1 and 2 because obviously you need to make tackling sort of a focus this week to the extent that it's ever not a focus. But um, and then scheme and practice wise, you need to really be really good at as best you can at covering the underneath stuff.
Mhm.
But like as far as the safeties, like just find a combination that you feel like the safeties just aren't going to be good probably, and you just need to. So it's less to like use this week to coach them up because they're not going to like get orders of magnitude better.
Right.
It's just find whatever combination is not the worst. So
Yeah.
as far as like what you're focusing on in teaching and repping in practice, it's yeah, like see if you can get better at covering the underneath stuff. Um,
If things were different and maybe you had a lot of options at safety instead of not a lot of options, like I don't know, maybe you could spend some time toying around with the different options in practice, but it seems like you don't have a lot of options, so you just need to pick one and get those guys ready.
and then Mark Wood said Stetson's strength is to the middle. We mostly covered this. Stetson's strength is to the middle of the field, and that's our weakness, especially for the first half. How do we get our best players there? 5, that's Jalen Armour Davis at CB for Pat. Will Brian Branch have a bigger role? Would be nice to have Ronald Williams. Um, yeah, it would be nice to have Ronald just to give them more options. Again, he repped mostly at corner and star, I think. So, like, I don't know, my kingdom for Jared Maiden, man. Like, I was never as harsh on Jared as some people were, but like, he was not any more than a replacement level safety in this defense. But
Right.
man, that'd make me feel great right now.
Yeah.
Um,
What is it? It's been some position every year, it feels like, for like 3 or 4 years, where all of a sudden, like, we just have nobody at some point in the season,
yeah.
mostly due to injuries. But
Um,
I will say too, like I don't like yes, the middle of the field has kind of been Alabama's weakness, but I don't know that every team can kind of take advantage of that. Like when you've got guys like Mond and uh, Corral, like that can kind of make plays on the outside that you have to commit more resources to. It does kind of open up the middle, but I'm just not sure like Bennett is the type of guy that is going to take advantage of,
right.
or that Alabama can't like help out the middle a little bit and expose the outside.
And like, I don't know. As far as moving Pat to star, one, okay, he has repped there many times. Like, I know there were a lot of times when they kind of wanted him to be there, and they just didn't have the other guys at outside corner. But I don't think he's ever played there in a game. So, like, we don't really know if he would be instant lights out Mika Fitzpatrick at
Mm-hmm.
star. I think he'd be great. Like, there's no
Who
reason to think he wouldn't be. But, like,
who would move to outside? Would it be Moore? Would Moore move to outside if he were to?
I think they would probably bring in like Marcus Banks or Jalen Armour Davis.
Okay.
There have been people saying that supposedly the competition at the other outside spot was really close between Josh Jobe and Marcus Banks, and Jobe has obviously been lights out. So if Banks is that good, and see the thing is that like I don't know, I have no concern about getting like if that was their best combination of 3 corners, then they probably would have done it already. So like I don't I'm not concerned about getting Malachi Moore out of star and getting in because like if that were the best combination of your 3 kind of corner spots, then they probably would have done it already. Like so I think the motivating factor people here is they want to get Malachi Moore to safety, and if that's the way they have to do it, um, then I don't know. Okay, and if they feel good about another outside corner, then fine. Um, Again, like I don't think it's a given that having more at safety would like be an upgrade because like yes, he played there in high school. He
Mm-hmm.
played he was kind of a Minka type in high school. Like he played all over the place, but like I don't know like especially because it seems like they're gonna have Branch at safety as well. Um, I don't know. I've seen people saying move Branch to star, and more at safety, but you still need a third safety
Yeah.
besides Moore or Branch and Helms, and until Battle's back, like it's Daniel Wright or maybe Eddie Smith, who we
Yeah.
have never seen in any game action and have no idea how good he is. So I'm not saying any of this is impossible. I don't think any of the like true corners are going to like move to safety or something like that. Um, I wouldn't terribly mind seeing like Moore and Branch as the safeties, but also that's two true freshmen playing safety in this defense, which makes me very nervous, even if they are in the abstract better players than the other guys.
Mhm.
Um, maybe like if you get to the second, I don't know, if those guys play well in those spots and you get to the second half, like I wouldn't mind seeing them as like the second if Battle's in there, like and he's a full time safety,
Right.
um, then I don't know. I wouldn't mind them being the second and third safeties when you have Battle back there. Like Battle hasn't been amazing this year, but like he's clearly their best safety and is kind of the signal caller on the back end. So in the first half, are you going to have the signal caller and your secondary be one of two true freshmen like
God.
that? Oof. So like I get why people are motivated to do these thought experiments right now, but the big thing is we just don't have good answers because we don't know who's been repping where in practice. So all of this is just pure speculation, and none of those moves comes without a potentially severe drawback.
Yep. I, I kind of, I mean, I kind of think we'll see, right. I kind of think we see
I'm
him get a second chance.
I'm pretty sure we will with Battle Out. I just like I said, they can't. I just don't see them benching him entire. They need three safeties, and you're not gonna bench one of the guys that you had as in one of those top spots, even no matter how bad he was, like, are you going to completely bench him with, like, maybe in the second half? Sure.
Right.
But in the
Yeah.
first
If it's
half,
still a problem, yeah.
in the first half, I like if they're just completely replacing him with some combination of Eddie Smith and or true freshman, like that would surprise me. Like maybe it turns out to be better, but I would be surprised if that's what they end up doing.
Yeah. Part of me just wants to see Wright kind of redeem himself too. I don't, I don't like talking bad about people.
Yeah. And like, okay, in the first couple games, he was usually in the right place and just didn't finish. Um, I don't know. He's plenty like aggressive enough. Like I think if he kind of focuses on the fundamentals, he can improve the tackling. Um, and then I think in the Ole Miss game, he was just pressing. Like I think he had seen the criticisms. He had heard enough of it from his I'm sure his coaching staff and others.
Mhm.
After like not getting Smith out against A&M on that long touchdown, it seemed like he was just so desperate to make a play that he was kind of freelancing, and forgetting that when you're the one deep safety, you can't try to jump around in the middle of the field unless you're Ed fucking Reed.
Yeah.
And I hate to break it to you, Daniel, but you're not Ed fucking Reed. So like, I don't think he's a total loss. Like, no question, his level of play so far has been really really bad. I don't think he's a total lost cause. It's not like he's just too slow. It's not like he just completely just does not know where to be at any given time.
He
I
doesn't have athleticism, and it just seems like he's just kind of in his own head, which, you get him out of that, you can get him prepared. Like, I don't know, you may have a playmaker. I don't know.
Yeah. And hey, if that's like, I don't know, if you feel good about Moore or Wright in base, then fine. And bring him in for dime and let him. I don't know how much time they end up playing in the first half, and maybe that kind of mitigates the pressing need here. But um, even just get him in a dime and let him build back his confidence. Like I don't. I think the problem here is largely mental, and by that I don't mean that he like doesn't know the defense or anything like that. I think he's probably lost his confidence
Yep.
pretty like, and understandable in the way things have gone for him so far. But like, I understand if they don't want to bring him back in, and if they find a combination that works without him, then fine. But like, I don't think what we've seen him from him so far indicates that he just can't play, that he's just not talented enough, or that
Yeah.
he's not doesn't know the defense enough.
Yeah, I mean, he obviously showed something last season through camp and everything to like win the job.
Right.
Yeah, I can't imagine like Alabama. I mean, college football in general, but just like being on a Saban defense, like how competitive it is for like a spot on the defense, and like if you make one or two mistakes, I feel like it's really easy to get in your own head, and the fact that we don't see more guys probably get in their own heads is just like amazing.
Yeah, I mean, just think about the pressure these guys are under. Think about even if they ignore us, which spoiler alert, that not us in particular, obviously, but like all the chatter out there, like they see that shit, man. Like, and even if they're the rare people who can block that out entirely, they still have these standards for themselves. And like, I have no doubt that there is no one being harder on Daniel right now than himself. And man, like, I don't. If it were me in that situation, I would be wrecked. Like, I would not be able to recover from this.
Yeah.
And I think people should keep that sort of thing in mind a little more often, but to consider, like, I don't know. I was probably as critical of him as anyone on Saturday, and I feel pretty bad about that because I don't like to do that. Like, I don't know. I emotionally live tweet during games and say stuff that I wouldn't say with a cooler head. But as a general policy, I don't like to just talk shit about players like that. I think it's one of the things that really annoys me the most is like, if you're saying sports fans have so little ability to like talk about players and assess their abilities in a way that's not like there's a way for you to say that this guy is not playing well, that this guy isn't good enough, without just being like, he sucks, he's trash. People have no idea how to make those criticisms about. I'm not going to say like, oh, they don't know how to separate like personal from like assessing their play, but the way they talk about their play makes it personal insults, and that just drives me up the wall.
The like it's kind of like inhumane. I feel like a lot of the time, like even if we accept their criticism as like being true, which half the time I feel like it's not.
Oh yeah, because people don't know what they're fucking talking about half the time. Which includes us at times, obviously, but like like even presuming your criticism is true, like there is a way to say it without. I mean, I think you hit it right on the head. It's dehumanizing the way people talk about these players, and it's just like that is a person who is not only better at sports than you, but like better at sports than 99.99% of the people who have ever and will ever play football. Like,
and way more invested in like them being good than you are.
Yeah.
Like they're not trying to go out there and suck. Like they're like working their ass off to try and be good, and like it's always so dismissive too. It's like, oh, they suck, like get them out of there.
Yeah. I think it was Andy Staples did a long form like profile of Mac like right around the beginning of the season, and he was talking about like Mac's dad, who I didn't know both of his parents were former pro tennis players, but he wrote him like a notebook, like a guidebook when he went to Alabama, to like give him advice on how to prepare and stuff like that. And one of the things he had written in there was like, and I don't want to get too much into this narrative of like these all football players or these, there's uncomfortable like racial implications in there, I think, but like there's the narrative of like the football player coming from a bad place or a broken home or whatever, and using football as a means to lift themselves out of it. There are definitely people that are in that situation, or even not even from like a like a horrible background, but who are middle class, working class, that come from disadvantaged socioeconomic backgrounds, and this is their opportunity, particularly at Alabama, where their prospects are very real. This is their chance to maybe set up their families for generations. And
Yeah.
so Maxat has something in there about like think about the way that your play and your attitude and everything you do affects them, because there are people here for whom this means everything.
Right.
And I think, obviously we as fans don't have that same direct impact that a guy like Mac has, but just like keep that in mind that like nobody is more invested in the success of these players, and nobody has more writing on the outcome for them than they themselves. So
Yeah.
just don't be a dick to players.
Yeah. Just in short, I'm going to be rooting for Wright on Saturday if he gets a chance.
Yeah, like if he has a great play, like that will be awesome. Give us a don't don't try to jump a route in the middle of the field. But if you give us a pick six, Daniel, if
Yeah.
Bennett throws up a duck under pressure and you can get it, let's see it, man. Let's see it. I want it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Let's. I mean, we don't need to talk special teams, but if there was ever a game where we could get something out of the special teams, I think this is the one this season.
Yeah. If at
A
any point,
Waddle punt return touchdown or something.
if at any
Let's,
point they are dumb enough to kick it to Jalen, like,
yeah, please.
yeah. And I don't want to pull the horrible jinx in here, but like, I know he's only kicked 2 field goals so far this season, and I don't know. I feel pretty good about Riker. Like, I
Yeah.
don't want to have to be in a situation where he's having to kick a 49-yarder to win the game, but that's just because I don't want to be in that situation to begin with, and not
Yeah.
because I think he's worse than anyone at making those kicks.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And hopefully whoever is punting is just be competent. Like, if whatever you have to compromise gets you a 38-yarder, that's better than a shank.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't give me a 15-yarder. Don't give me a negative punt.
Yeah. If we've got a 4th and 5 in midfield, maybe consider going for it.
Nick.
So score predictions.
So I kind of feel like maybe not the most, like the majority outcome, the more than, I'm not sure there's like a more than 50% outcome here, but I feel like the most likely of all the outcomes is like Alabama wins and like covers fairly easily. Because like to the extent that I have a read on this game, and I don't feel like I have a great read on this game, but I mean, I kind of feel like it's sort of what last year's SEC championship was. I kind of think like they're not going to hold Georgia to 10 points probably, but like kind of feel like Alabama scores more easily than a lot of people think they are.
Yeah.
And I kind of think Alabama has a rebound game just on defense, just a little regression for one thing, but like also like, I don't know, kind of think they're going to come out fired up on defense. So, I don't know. I think if you're ranking the likely outcomes, it would be like Alabama covers comfortably, Georgia wins, Alabama wins but doesn't cover, and then like Georgia wins big.
You think Georgia winning is more likely than Alabama winning close?
If it's close, that makes me feel like substantially. Like if you could come from the future and guarantee me right now that it was going to be like a 3-point game, that would make me feel extremely nervous. So I don't know if one is, they're about even probably, but yeah, Alabama winning but not I don't know. Yeah, I'm nervous about it if you tell me that it's close, which I guess is kind of obvious.
Well, because there's almost, I mean, yeah, because like you said, the likelihood that Georgia is the one that wins comfortably is like very unlikely.
Yeah,
Right? So
I don't feel like that's a very likely outcome at all. So
um,
uh, I might go 37-24.
okay, yeah, my Twitter poll that was I think right in the Georgia. I was surprised I put a poll out there because I was just trying to get everybody's pulse on where people were
Mm-hmm.
thinking Georgia would score after the Ole Miss game, and 20-29 was the most likely, which I was kind of surprised because I felt
That's
like a lot of my timeline was like
yeah.
way overreacting to,
That's gumpier than I would have expected.
yeah. So FP like the line is 6.5 or 7. I don't know the
Mm-hmm.
most recent line.
The last I saw
Uh,
was 6, but it's around there. Yeah.
yeah, FPI has it at 3.5. I think it probably overreacted a little bit to Alabama's defense on Saturday. I think I think it's got the Georgia offense right, except when playing like really good defenses uh, that that can kind of stop you from doing everything. So I think it's overrating at least for this game the Georgia offense a little bit and underrating the Alabama defense. I kind of I kind of favor the line at like 7. I don't know what the over under is, but I think Alabama probably is in the mid to high 30s. Like I think that was where you were. So I'm gonna go like 30. I know because the line I like 37-20. But that's really covering.
Yeah. So like I went because I thought about this. Like I went and looked at how just the base like neutral field for FPI and SP plus, and both of them had it at like 2.5, 3.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like that's as like a raw measure of difference in team quality. That's probably about fair.
Yeah.
But I think there's sort of a breaking point, and this is so I specifically went back and compare. Um, I can't remember if I did it for both or if it was just FPI because I couldn't find last year's um, SP plus, but
Mm-hmm.
like the final difference between LSU and Georgia and FPI was like 6 or 7 points. Um, and obviously LSU beat them like a rented mule in the SEC championship game. So I kind of think there's like a breaking point where even if as a raw measure of team quality, you're pretty close. If one team's offense is really, really good, if it's mostly built on one team is great on offense and one team is great on defense, if a team on offense executes really well, there's kind of a breaking point where that difference in team quality doesn't really show up in the score because being so great on offense, if you execute well, gives you an
Mm-hmm.
advantage that being great on defense doesn't.
Yeah. So just some quick math. So Alabama had like 10 possessions against Ole Miss, I think. I know they had 10 against. I know they had like 10 like first team or like non-garbage time against A&M.
I think it was
Uh,
11. It was 11 possessions because they scored 9 touchdowns, punted once, and had a fumble. So yeah, 11
okay.
possessions.
Um, I mean, I feel like they probably score a touchdown on like half of them. Like if they're scoring on less than half, like I don't know. I feel like that's kind of a problem.
If you get 10 possessions and score 5 on them, that's 35 points.
Yeah,
Um,
and
if like like if you guarantee me right now Alabama gets 35 points in this game, I'm hammering Alabama to cover. Like
yeah, because I don't think Georgia gets more than like 5 scoring opportunities, not like
yeah,
5 touchdowns necessarily. Like I think I was trying to like talk myself out of 37-20, but I think I'm going to stick with it.
Well, all right. That'll do it for us this week. Obviously, this was a big game. We had a lot of fun talking forever about it. Hopefully, y'all enjoyed
Hopefully
it a
we'll have
little
some
bit.
fun next week.
Yeah.
Talking about it again.
Hopefully, this is a long podcast, a long show next week, and not a short one. So, yeah, we're counting down the hours till Saturday, and we'll see y'all next week. And roll tide.
Roll Tide.